Lord forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack making backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the vital speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the bay.
Of all the brothers I knew, we stuck together in the hood like crazy glue. Now it's every man for themselves. Nobody wants to get their own, they want to take your wealth. You're forced to represent the ground you stand on. You don't wanna beef with nobody, but bring it on. You ain't got no wreck, you want respect. And if you gotta take a life, now who's next?
I'm from Trinidad Northeast, and he said, I recognize your face. How old are you? So I'm like, I'm 50. And he said, you used to go to Go-Go's and all that? And I said, yeah. And he said, my real name, Tommy Eaton. So I said, oh man, you from 15th place. I remember the Maximus.
It's really real when I feel the way that I do right now.
Way back in 1996, a female artist from Washington, D.C. did something that the city hadn't seen before. Her debut single would soar to the top 25 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts and eventually go gold, selling over 500,000 copies. Though the homicides had begun to drop in her city, her hit single would provide a vivid portrayal of what had transpired in the nation's capital since the turn of the decade, just 6 years prior.
So you can leave the next crew. 5 o'clock in the morning. Where you gonna be?
On President Bush's White House. It's a huge business. Last year, just the drugs that were seized by the police had a street value of $18 million.
But none of that is very encouraging in terms of what might be happening in the United Kingdom in a while to come.
What have you been Today, Mr. Douglas Hogg, Home Office Minister, saw Washington's cracked neighborhoods through the curtained windows of an unmarked police van. He drove past crack houses and saw groups of sellers waiting for business. It seemed quiet, but police told him, just come back after dark. Then, parts of Washington resemble a war zone, where murders this year have topped 170, mostly drug-related. Last year alone, 7,000 people were arrested for crack possession in this city of just 700,000 people.
And it would be a tragedy for us if it happened to us. I also have a very real sense of anxiety because of the high risk, I think, of something like this developing and the recognition of how destructive it would be.
A detective summed it up for Mr. Hogg in a sentence. Crack was unknown here in 1986. Now, it's tearing this city apart. Ken Reese, News at 10, Washington.
According to the Disaster Center, in 1989, D.C. recorded 462 homicides. In 1990, 498. In 1991, the numbers reached an all-time high of 509 homicides. It dipped in 1992 to 460.
In response to rising violent crime in cities across the U.S., on January 9, 1992, the FBI will form the Safe Streets Task Force, a name that might sound familiar for its role in arresting some of your favorite rappers. But in the beginning, the Safe Streets Violent Crime Initiative was established to address escalating violent crime rates nationwide. The initiative would aim to collaborate federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to combat violent gangs, reduce violent crime, and apprehend dangerous fugitives. And one of the cities where the task force would first take effect would be Washington, D.C., which, like many other cities, when crack cocaine invaded, it not only would bring violence, but for many living inside of the chaos, it seemed as if it fostered a certain destructive mindset.
Initially, the violence began with these crews, which were usually teenagers and young men in their 20s, fighting over lucrative turf, corners, housing projects, streets. And then that transformed evolved, if you will, into a culture of violence where everybody was armed up and the smallest slight could lead to a shooting. Somebody bumps into somebody at a nightclub, somebody talks to somebody's girlfriend, and that in turn evolved into a culture of retaliation. You shot one of mine, I'm going to come back and get one of yours, and so on and so forth. And there were many of these, I call them matrices of violence in different neighborhoods in the city.
And one of those areas at the time was a sprawling complex of large buildings with hundreds of units, home to many low-income families and a high level of crime, known as Stanton dwellings, located in the Anacostia section of D.C. The housing project would be demolished in 2002, but during its existence, it was notorious for its criminal activity. And among the many names the task force had on its list after arriving in the district was a burgeoning rapper and an alleged big-time hustler, Tommy E. Edelin.
But this Super Predator packet I have contains the names of what would be considered all of the top hitters of the time in Washington, D.C. You got Kevin Gray, Sam Carson, of course, Wayne Perry, Tommy Edelin, William Sweeney, Oscar Veal, Larry Gooch.
Got there, he came to me, he said, my name is Brother Means. So I was like, Brother Means, what that mean? He said, I'm the first black king. That's where it come from. And so he asked me where I was from. I'm from Trinidad Northeast. And he said, I recognize your face. How old are you? So I'm like, I'm 50. And he said, you used to go to Go-Go's and all that? And I said, yeah. And he said, my real name, Tommy E. So I said, oh, man, you from 15 Place. I remember the Maximas and the Crystal Skates. And I think you ran with that Yum Yum crew. He started laughing. He said, yeah. Yo, not the carry-out, bro. Not the carry-out.
Not the carry-out.
And so, as we got to get closer, because he said, man, I finally know somebody that I know, instead of people that's just from Washington.
Why?
Come hear me speak. So I was like, come hear you speak. What you mean? He say, I'm Nation, and I'm like an E-man. Come hear me speak on Fridays. I go hear him speak on Friday. And he's very powerful when he speaks. Sort of had me thinking it was Farrakhan up there. That's how he talk. I mean, his words move you, and he in for the struggle of the for our black people. He also taught business. He taught literacy. He taught school. He teach self-respect. He teach fitness. And the one particular story I'll never forget, it was a ride down there. They rided heavy. Police couldn't get us to go in. The only person could stop that ride was Tommy. He came out, said, look at the administration, they all out there, from the wardens to the assistant wardens. They can't get us to go nowhere. Tommy said, look, brothers, just go back. They came to him and said, thank you so much for what you've done. He told them straight up, y'all really think y'all running this place? Y'all not running nothing. And just walk away.
In a time where Washington, D.C. would produce notorious figures like Rayful Edmonds, Wayne Perry, and Carnell Jones, another one of those names that rang bells on D.C. streets was a man by the name of Tommy E. Edelin, raised in the tough Stanton dwelling housing projects of Anacostia. Tommy's early life would be shaped by the crack cocaine epidemic. Like many youth coming up in the city at that time, Tommy would be pulled into the drug game, where he would quickly rise to lead a gang known as the 1-5 Mob, centered around 15th Place Southeast and Stanton Road. The 1-5 mob became a force in D.C., making moves in the drug trade and extending its influence across neighborhoods. The Young Crew, a network of Southeast youth, operated alongside Tommy's gang, sharing roots and connections, according to Damon O-Face Green, an alleged former member of the group. He would testify that the Young Crew would eventually evolve sort of into the 1-5 mob, though it would maintain its own presence with alliances and a steady network. According to the feds, Tommy's reach would grow and he would direct a complex operation that would hold control over his section of Southeast DC. At Tommy's trial in 2002, Damon Green would describe the respect that Tommy would command on the streets, noting how young hustlers admired his wealth, his cars, his clothes, jewelry, and success. Green, though not a key player, saw Tommy's influence and explained that he was a leader set apart, while figures like Kevin Gray, another major player in DC's drug trade, linked to an alleged 40 murders, were not respected in the same way. But he would also testify to the violence associated with Tommy, recounting hearing about a meeting at Drama City Studios where members of the crew would allegedly discuss the killing of Maurice Reese Dolman, an event that he would go on to describe as the beginning of Stanton Dwelling's descent into violence. By the mid-1990s, the 1-5 mob would allegedly leave a devastating wake across neighborhoods throughout the city, as prosecutors would accuse Tommy of being connected to at least 7 murders, including the tragic deaths of Rodney and Volante Smith, 2 innocent siblings who authorities allege were mistakenly targeted in a drive-by shooting. The violence wouldn't end there. Prosecutors will also link the 1-5 mob to more than 13 assaults and 20 other shootings. Green's testimony also described Ronnie Squid Middleton as Tommy's enforcer in the 1-5 mob, explaining how he would carry out murders on behalf of Tommy and even his father, Earl Tony Edelin. That would include the homicide of Emmanuel Bennett in 1995, as well as Edgar Tweedy Watson in 1997. In the middle of all this, Tommy would seemingly look for an escape, and in 1995, he would take on the entertainment name Tommy E and start promoting himself as a rapper, telling stories about life in DC, hoping to make a name for himself in hip-hop. And that December, he would appear on WUSA 9 in a segment highlighting his journey from hustler to artist. Standing in his Drama City Records studio, he would speak out about his tough upbringing as well as his hope of inspiring others. But this public appearance would also bring about the unwanted attention from the FBI, because not long after, they would launch Operation Clean Sweep, targeting the 1-5 mob and the network of connections Tommy had built. Informants and surveillance gradually revealed ties between Tommy and drug trafficking, racketeering, and the violence that had gripped DC. And in 2002, the federal government would bring Tommy to trial, charging him with drug trafficking as well as violent crimes. Given the severity of the accusations, prosecutors would seek the death penalty, a rare move in drug-related cases. Before and after Tommy's trial, the federal government would only pursue capital punishment for drug traffickers in several other instances, including the case of Raul Gaza in 1993 and also the 2004 case of Alfred Burgenos. In Tommy's case, however, the jury would vote 9-3 in favor of the death penalty, falling short of a unanimous verdict, ultimately sparing him execution. Instead, he would receive life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, y'all know this is the time in the show where I need any of my people that was in DC, especially in the southeast section, during this time to get in the comment box to give us our daily reminder of the chaos that was going on out there. But deeper than that, I want anybody that had their ears tuned in to the hip hop scene at that time to get down in the comment box to let us know if y'all heard of Tommy E, whether it was some street shit or anything to do with the music. Now, y'all make sure y'all hit the red bell and subscribe button right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. Y'all definitely get in the comment box. Let me know what cities we need to go to, what stories we need to tell, what we missed, what we got wrong, all of that. Tap in with me directly, Instagram, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. And until our next breakdown, y'all know the rules. Shades Popalot. Salute the almighty mob.